Tonia sat at her office desk, heart racing with excitement as she read the message on her phone. I can't wait to finally meet you, beautiful. Valentine's Day will be unforgettable. See you at 7 p.m. It had been 2 months since she met Chaik online. He was charming, successful, and seemed to understand her in ways no one else had. Their late-night calls, deep conversations, and flirty texts had created an emotional bond she never thought possible with someone she hadn't met in person. Her best friend, Ada, had warned her. Online men are different in real life, be careful. But Tonia wasn't worried. Chaik had been nothing but sweet, patient, and attentive. He never pressured her and respected her boundaries. He even sent videos of himself at work, proving he wasn't some scammer or catfish. Now, he had invited her to his house for a private Valentine's dinner. She hesitated for a moment. Meeting at a restaurant seemed safer, but Chaik had insisted that he wanted to cook for her. I'm a great cook, he had joked. Let me spoil you. Against her better judgment, she agreed. By 6 p.m., she had slipped into a stunning red dress, carefully applied her makeup, and styled her hair. As she looked in the mirror, she smiled. Tonight would be magical. At 6:45 p.m., she ordered a Bolt to Chaik's house. The driver raised an eyebrow when she gave him the address. Are you sure about this place, madam? He asked. Yes, she answered, with confidence she didn't quite feel. As the car sped toward an unfamiliar neighborhood, an uneasy feeling crept up her spine. She shook it off. It was just nerves. She had no idea her life was about to change forever. The car pulled up in front of a gated compound. Tonia peered out the window, her excitement mingling with a strange unease. The street was quiet, almost too quiet. The house itself was beautiful, 2 stories, modern design, but something felt off. The gate was slightly open, as if someone had been expecting her. The Bolt driver turned to her. Are you sure this is the place? He asked again, concern lacing his voice. Yes, she said, forcing a smile. My date is waiting. The driver hesitated before nodding. As she stepped out, she felt his lingering gaze on her, like he wanted to say something but thought better of it. Tonia took a deep breath, adjusted her dress, and walked through the gate. The main door was slightly ajar. Chaik, she called out. Come in, baby. His voice floated from inside, warm and inviting. She stepped into a beautifully furnished living room. The dim lighting, scented candles, and soft music created an intimate atmosphere. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses sat on the glass table. Wow, you really went all out, she said, smiling as she walked further inside. Then she noticed something strange. The living room was spotless. Too spotless. There were no personal items, no family photos, no random books, nothing that showed someone lived here. Make yourself comfortable, Chaik called from the kitchen. Dinner is almost ready. Tonia sat on the couch, but something in her gut screamed that something wasn't right. That was when she saw it. A second wine glass, already filled. And a lipstick stain on the rim. Someone else had been drinking from it. Recently. Her breath hitched. She turned toward the hallway. And that was when she heard the sound. A soft creak. Like someone shifting behind a closed door. She wasn't alone. Tonia's fingers curled around the edge of the couch as her pulse quickened. She forced herself to breathe, telling herself it was nothing. Maybe Chaik had another guest earlier. Maybe a friend. Maybe. Another soft creak. Her head snapped toward the hallway. The sound had come from one of the closed doors. She swallowed hard. Something didn't feel right. Trying to stay calm, she turned back to the wine glasses. The lipstick stain was faint but unmistakable. A shade of deep red, slightly smudged, like someone had taken a sip and then wiped their lips. Her stomach twisted. Baby, are you okay? Chaik's voice came from the kitchen, light and casual. She forced a smile, though he couldn't see it. Yeah, just admiring your place, she called back, hoping her voice sounded normal. Slowly, she stood up and took a step toward the hallway. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, but curiosity and fear held her in place. She reached for the first door. Hesitated. Then, carefully, she pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. Then, a soft shuffle. Her breath hitched. Someone was inside. Her mind raced. Who? Another guest? A girlfriend? A stranger? Dinner is ready. Chike's voice was suddenly much closer. Tony had jolted back just as he appeared in the doorway, holding a steaming plate of food. His eyes flicked to the hallway, then back to her. For the first time, she noticed something about his smile. It didn't quite reach his eyes. Come, sit, he said, motioning to the table. Tonya hesitated. Every fiber of her being told her to leave. But how? She couldn't just run out. She forced a smile and nodded. Okay, she said, walking back toward the couch.
As she sat down, she noticed something else. The lock on the front door, it was a deadbolt, and it was locked from the inside. Her heart pounded. She wasn't sure if she would be able to leave at all. Tanya's hands felt clammy as she sat at the dining table. Cheeky placed a plate in front of her, a beautifully plated dish of pasta with grilled chicken. It smelled amazing, but her appetite had vanished. She forced a smile. This looks delicious. Cheeky pulled out his chair and sat across from her, watching her closely. Too closely. He wasn't blinking enough. Eat, he said, his voice smooth but firm. Tonya picked up her fork and twirled the pasta, her mind racing. The deadbolt was locked. The hallway had a closed door with someone, or something, inside, the lipstick on the wine glass. She glanced at Cheek. His expression hadn't changed. Aren't you eating? She asked. He leaned back in his chair, still watching her. I already ate. Her stomach twisted. Oh, okay. Her fingers gripped the fork as she twirled the pasta again, stalling. The silence between them was thick. The soft music playing in the background only made it eerier. Then she noticed something. There was no other plate. No sign that he had eaten. No dirty dishes in the sink. Her throat tightened. She needed to leave. I actually forgot, she started, but Cheek's gaze sharpened. Eat. The single word was soft, but the underlying command was unmistakable. Tonya swallowed. Should she pretend to eat? Should she try to excuse herself? Then, in the silence, she heard it again. A soft knock, not from the front door, from inside the hallway. Cheek's entire body stiffened. Tonya's breath caught. That was not her imagination. Someone was in that room. Before she could react, Cheek abruptly stood up. I'll be right back. He walked toward the hallway, his movements quick and precise. Tonya watched him disappear behind the door. Then, she heard whispering. Her pulse skyrocketed. She had seconds to decide. Should she try to escape now, or wait? Her gut screamed, run! Tonya's fingers clenched around the fork, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. Cheek had disappeared down the hallway. The whispering behind the closed door sent chills down her spine. Her instincts screamed, run! But how? The deadbolt was locked. If she made too much noise, he'd hear her before she could even reach the door. Her eyes darted around the room. Think, Tonya, think. She had her phone in her purse, but it was zipped shut. Even if she grabbed it, what would she do? Call someone? Type a text? A sudden thought hit her. The kitchen. If there was a back door, she could slip out before Cheek noticed. She slowly pushed back her chair, careful not to make a sound. Her muscles felt tight, her breath shallow. She took one cautious step toward the kitchen. A floorboard creaked beneath her foot. She froze. The whispering in the hallway stopped. Her blood turned to ice. A second passed, then another. Then, heavy footsteps. Tonya panicked. She darted toward the kitchen, nearly knocking over the chair. As she entered, her heart leaped with hope. A door. She grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. No, 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 she whispered, yanking at it in desperation. She spun around, searching for anything she could use to break the door or defend herself. Her eyes landed on a knife block. Footsteps. Getting closer. She lunged for the largest knife, gripping it with shaking hands just as Cheek appeared in the doorway. His eyes flicked to the knife in her hand. The warmth in his smile was gone. "Where are you going, Tonya?" he asked softly. A chill ran down her spine. The man she had been talking to for 2 months was a complete stranger, and now she was trapped in his house. Tonya's grip tightened around the knife. Cheek stood in the doorway, blocking her only way out. His expression was unreadable, but the warmth from earlier had vanished. "Where are you going?" he asked again, his voice calm, too calm. Tonya's throat felt dry. "Think fast. Stay calm." "I thought I heard something outside," she stammered, forcing a weak smile. "One got scared and wanted to check." Cheek didn't blink. His eyes flicked to the knife in her hand. "And the knife? You were going to check outside with a knife?" Tonya's pulse pounded in her ears. She needed to get past him, but he was taller, stronger, in a narrow doorway. "It's just a habit," she lied. "I don't like being alone in strange places." Cheek chuckled softly. It wasn't a friendly laugh, it was mocking. "Strange places?" He took a step forward. "I thought you liked me, Tonya. I thought we were having a good time." She instinctively stepped back, bumping into the kitchen counter. Her mind raced. If she screamed, would anyone hear? If she ran, could she get to the front door before he did? Then, behind him, something caught her eye. The hallway door. It was slightly opposite. It was slightly open now. A dark figure stood inside. Her stomach lurched. Cheeky noticed her eyes shift and turned sharply. In that moment, Tonya made a decision. Run. She darted forward, trying to shove past him, but he was faster. His hand clamped around her wrist, gripping it tightly. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled. Tonya gasped as he twisted her arm, making her drop the knife. It clattered to the floor. Panic surged through her. She struggled, kicked, tried to yah-eye, but he was too strong. Panic surged through her. She struggled, kicked, tried to yank away, but he was too strong. Then a low whimper came from the hallway. Chica froze. Tonya's breath caught. There was someone else here, and they were scared. Chica's jaw clenched. For a split second he was distracted. Tonya seized the moment. She jerked her knee up with all her strength, straight into his groin. He let out a sharp, loosening his grip just enough. She jerked her knee up with all her strength, yai straight into his groin. He let out a sharp grunt, loosening his grip just enough. Tonya ripped free. Without thinking, she bolted for the hallway, toward the open door, and toward whoever or whatever was inside. Tonya's feet barely touched the floor as she sprinted toward the open door in the hallway. She could hear Cheeky recovering behind her, cursing under his breath, but she didn't stop. She grabbed the edge of the doorframe and swung herself inside. Then she froze. The room was dark, but not empty. A figure sat on the floor, huddled in the corner. A woman. Tonya's breath caught. The woman's wrists were bound with duct tape, her mouth covered with a gag. Her eyes, wide, terrified, locked onto Tonya's. Tonya's stomach turned. Oh my God, the lipstick, the wine glass. This wasn't just some random girl. She had been here the whole time. Before Tonya could react, the woman let out a desperate, muffled cry, shaking her head wildly. Tonya barely had time to process before heavy footsteps. Cheek. She spun around just as he reached the doorway, his face twisted with fury. "Tonya." His voice was dark, dangerous. Tonya instinctively reached for the woman, fumbling with the tape around her wrists. "Let her go," she gasped. Cheek stepped forward, his face eerily calm despite the rage in his eyes. "You shouldn't have gone in here." Tonya yanked at the tape, but it was thick, too tight. "She doesn't belong to you," Tonya spat. Cheek tilted his head. "Belong?" He let out a cold chuckle. "She came to me just like you did." Tonya's blood ran cold. "You think you're special?" Cheek continued, stepping closer. "You were going to be next." Tonya's breath hitched. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a bad date. He had planned this for her. The woman beside her started crying, shaking violently. Tonya looked at her, then at Chica. She had seconds to decide. There was no reasoning with him, no pleading. She had only one choice: fight or die. Tonya's mind raced. Fighting Chaik was not an option. He was too strong. She had seconds to figure out another way. She glanced around the dimly lit room. It was small, cluttered, with a tiny window in the ceiling. It was too high for the tied-up woman to reach, but maybe. Cheek took another step forward, his body blocking the only exit. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "Tonya," he said, voice eerily calm. "You don't have to make this difficult. Just step away from her and we can talk." Talk? Number. He was playing with her. Tonya's heart pounded. The woman beside her was still trying to beside her was trembling, still trying to scream through the gag. The window. It was their only chance. Tonya lunged toward a wooden shelf on the wall and yanked it down, sending glass and books crashing to the floor. Cheeky flinched for half a second, just enough time for her to grab the broken edge of a picture frame and slice at the duct tape around the woman's wrists. "Move!" Tonya hissed. The woman's hands came free. She tore the gag from her mouth, gasping for air. Cheek's face darkened. Enough. He lunged. Tonya dodged just in time, sending him crashing into the fallen shelf. She grabbed the woman's arm and pointed to the window. "Climb! Now!" The woman hesitated, but fear took over. She scrambled onto a chair and reached for the window. Cheeky recovered too fast. He turned on Tonya, grabbing her wrist. "You're not leaving." Tonya whipped around and grabbed the only weapon she could find, a glass bottle from the floor. With every ounce of strength, she gnashed it against his face. Chaik roared in pain. That was all Tonya saw before she turned and shoved the woman through the window. She was out. Now it was Tonya's turn. But before she could climb, a hand clamped around her ankle. Chaik, bleeding but furious, pulled her back. "You're not going anywhere!" Tonya screamed. The fight was far from over. Tonya's body lurched backward as Cheek's iron grip tightened around her ankle. Her breath hitched. Number, no. The woman had escaped through the window, but Tonya, she was still trapped. Cheek's bloody face twisted in rage as he yanked her down with brutal force. Tonya's back hit the hard floor, knocking the wind out of her. She gasped, her vision blurring for a second. "I told you!" Cheeky growled, his voice low and terrifying. "You're not leaving!" Panic surged through her veins. Think, move, run. She kicked with all her strength, aiming for his face. Missed. Chaik lunged at her. Tonya twisted, grabbing a wooden chair leg from the broken shelf and swinging it blindly. It cracked against his shoulder. Cheeky grunted, his grip loosening just enough. Tonya scrambled to her feet. No time to think. No time to fight. She ran. Her feet pounded against the wooden floor as she dashed of the room, heart racing. She tore down the hallway, not looking back. The front door. She reached for the deadbolt, locked. Her hands fumbled, shaking as she to turn it. "Tonya!" Cheek's furious roar thundered behind her. She whirled around. He was coming, fast. Blood dripped down his face, his eyes blazing with fury. She yanked at the jolt again. Stuck. No, she whimpered. Cheek was seconds away. Her eyes darted around the room. Another way out. Anything! The window. Across the living room, a large window stood half open. It was her only chance. Tonya bolted. Cheek lunged, grabbing the back of her dress. Tonya ripped free. She reached the window, threw herself onto the sill. Cheeky grabbed her again. Tonya kicked wildly, screaming, thrashing. A loud crash. The window pane shattered as her body tumbled through. Glass, pain, cold air, then the feeling of falling. Tonya hit the ground hard, but she didn't stop. The sharp sting of glass cuts burned across her arms and legs, but survival mattered more than pain. She pushed up, stumbled forward, and ran. Her bare feet pounded the cold pavement as she tore through the compound, lungs burning, heart hammering. Behind her, a furious roar. Cheek. She risked a glance back. He was at the shattered window, bleeding, furious, and still coming. Tonya sprinted for the gate. "Please, let it be open." Her fingers hit metal, locked. Her stomach twisted. She yanked, pulled, pushed, no movement. No! She choked. Cheek was coming fast. Her eyes darted around. The wall. It wasn't high, maybe 8 feet. If she jumped, she could climb. Tonya ran at it full speed. Her fingers gripped the rough concrete, feet scrambling for a foothold. Behind her, Tonya stood in the middle of the road, chest heaving, as the car came to a slow stop beside her. The driver, a middle-aged man with a curious expression, leaned out of the window. "Madam, what happened?" he asked again, eyes narrowing at the sight of Tonya's bloodied arms and disheveled appearance. Tonya glanced over her shoulder. Cheek was still standing at the gate, his dark figure outlined in the dim light from the house. He wasn't chasing her anymore. He wasn't shouting. He was just watching, and that terrified her more than anything else. "Please, I need to get out of here," she gasped, hands trembling. "Take me anywhere, just away from this place." The driver frowned, clearly hesitant. "You sure you're okay, madam?" "You look—" "Please!" she almost screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. That seemed to snap him out of his indecision. With a quick nod, he unlocked the passenger door. "Get in, quick!" Tonya didn't need to be told twice. She yanked the door open and threw herself into the seat, slamming the door behind her. As the driver pulled away, Tonya's eyes remained locked on Cheek. He hadn't moved from the gate. His eyes tracked the car, but there was no panic, no urgency in his movements. Instead, he raised a hand and waved. Tonya's stomach turned. What was wrong with him? Why wasn't he chasing her? Did he think he'd already won? The car sped down the street, and Cheek's house disappeared from view, but the questions wouldn't stop. The driver glanced at her again, his brows furrowed in concern. "You need to call the police, madam. What happened to you?" Tonya opened her mouth to answer, but the words caught in her throat. Where would she start? How could she explain the nightmare she'd just escaped? "I don't know," she finally managed, her voice shaky. He just went crazy. He—" She stopped, her heart skipping a beat as she remembered the other woman. "Oh my God, there's someone else in there. We have to get help. Please, can you call the police?" The driver nodded quickly, pulling out his phone. Yes, I'll call them now. Just stay calm." Tonya tried to steady her breathing, but the panic wouldn't let go. She glanced back, half expecting to see Cheek's figure appearing in the distance, but he was nowhere in sight. Only his chilling smile remained in her memory. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The car sped through the empty streets, leaving Cheeky's house far behind, but deep down Tonya knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The car sped down the dimly lit streets, the hum of the engine the only sound cutting through the silence. Tonya's breathing was still ragged, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The driver, sensing her distress, spoke gently. "Don't worry, madam. You're safe now. I just called the police. They're sending officers to check the house." Tonya closed her eyes for a brief second, relief washing over her. "Thank you." She glanced down at her hands, scratched, smeared with blood from the broken glass. Her dress was torn at the hem, her legs covered in tiny cuts, but she was alive, and she had escaped. The thought sent fresh tears to her eyes, but she blinked them away. No time for that now. There was still another woman in that house. She prayed the police would arrive in time to help her. The driver turned onto a main road, where streetlights flickered above them. "Do you want me to take you to a hospital?" Tonya hesitated. She was injured, but not badly. What she really needed was someone she could trust. "No," she said finally. "Please, take me to my friend's house." Ada. She needed to see Ada. She needed someone familiar, someone safe. The driver nodded. "All right, just give me the address." Tonya quickly sent a text to Ada, her fingers shaking. "I'm coming over. Something happened. Please don't sleep." The message sent. No response yet. She stared out of the window, watching as familiar parts of the city came into view. The further she got from Cheeky's neighborhood, the lighter she felt. The fear hadn't completely faded, but hope was creeping in. She had survived. She was going to be okay. And soon, the police would handle Cheeky, or so she thought. Because some nightmares don't end when you wake up. Some monsters don't let go that easily. But for now, she was safe. For now. The car pulled up outside Ada's apartment, a small but cozy building in a quieter part of town. The moment Tanya saw the familiar entrance, her chest tightened. She was safe. The driver turned to her. "You sure you'll be okay here?" Tonya nodded, her voice still shaky. "Yes, thank you so much." She fumbled for her purse, but the driver held up a hand. "No need. Just get inside and rest." Gratitude swelled in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered again before stepping out of the car. The night air was cooler here, quieter. Nothing like the suffocating silence of Chica's house. She walked up to Ada's door and knocked hurriedly. It took a moment before she heard footsteps inside. Then the door swung open. Ada stood there, her eyes heavy with sleep and confusion. She looked at Tonya, her ripped dress, scratched arms, wild eyes, then frowned. "Tonya, what—" Without waiting, Tonya pushed inside, shutting the door behind her. She exhaled deeply. She was home. Ada turned, arms crossed. "You texted me in the middle of the night saying something happened. What is going on?" Tonya's throat tightened. Where did she start? How did she explain all of it? "Cheek, he's not who I thought. Ada, he had another woman tied up in his house." Ada's eyes widened slightly. "Tied up?" "Yes." "I heard something. I checked a room, and she was there. He tried to trap me, too. I barely escaped." Ada's expression shifted, but not to shock. It was hesitation, doubt. Tonya's stomach dropped. "Ada, you believe me, right?" Ada let out a slow breath. "Tonya, you're shaking. You look like you just went through hell. But, are you sure?" Tonya froze. "What do you mean, am I sure?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I saw her. He locked the doors. He grabbed me." Ada chewed her lip. "I mean, are you sure you didn't misunderstand the situation? Maybe she was into, something kinky?" Tonya stared. She felt like the ground had just split open beneath her. "Ada, I barely got out alive." Ada sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I know, I'm sorry, Tonya, this is serious. You're saying he kidnapped someone, but Cheek, he seemed normal." Tonya's blood boiled. "I don't care how he seemed. I know what I saw." Ada held up her hands. Okay. Look, let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe you were overwhelmed. Maybe you panicked." Tonya's vision blurred with frustration. Ada didn't believe her. Not fully, not enough. A sick feeling crawled up Tonya's spine. If her best friend had doubts? What if the police didn't believe her either? What if Cheeky got away with it? Tonya's hands trembled as she sat on Ada's couch, her heart still racing. She had barely escaped with her life, and now her best friend was doubting her. But there was no time for frustration. She needed to make sure Chica never did this to anyone else. She took a shaky breath and grabbed her phone. "Who are you calling?" Ada asked, her voice laced with concern. "The police." Ada's eyebrows furrowed. "Are you sure, Tonya? What if—" "Stop!" Tonya cut her off, her voice firm now. "There's no what if. That man is dangerous, and if the police don't handle this, someone else will end up trapped in that house." Ada fell silent. Tonya dialed 911. It didn't take long before 2 police cars pulled up in front of Ada's apartment. Tonya, still shaken, told them everything. The house, the locked doors, the other woman. "Are you certain about what you saw?" one of the officers asked. Tonya's jaw clenched. Why was everyone doubting her? "Yes, I was there. He tried to trap me too. Please, just check the house." The officers exchanged a glance before nodding. "We'll investigate. If what you're saying is true, we'll handle it." Tonya exhaled. Finally. As the officers left, she sank into the couch. Ada sat beside her, looking guilty. "Tonya, I'm sorry. I should have believed you right away." Tonya didn't respond for a moment. She was tired. Finally, she whispered, "I just want him caught." By morning, the news was everywhere. Businessman arrested for holding woman hostage in his home. Survivor speaks out on Valentine's Day. Horror. The police found the woman tied up exactly where Tanya had said. Cheek had tried to deny everything, but with evidence stacked against him, he had no way out. Tanya was called in to give a statement. The relief of seeing him in handcuffs made her knees weak. He couldn't hurt her, or anyone else. As she left the station, Ada squeezed her hand. "You were right, and you were brave." Tonya sighed. "I just hope other women learn from this." Ada nodded. "They will." Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to normal, but Tonya wasn't the same. She became more cautious, more aware. She also spoke out. She shared her story on social media, in interviews, in small women's groups. Never ignore red flags. Never go to a stranger's house alone. Trust your instincts. And most importantly, if something feels wrong, run. She hoped her voice would save someone else, because she had learned the hard way. Some men don't want love, some men want control, and some never let go. Trust your gut. If something feels off, leave. Meet in public places, never private homes. Tell someone where you're going. Share your location. No matter how nice a man seems, be cautious. If you see danger, run. Tanya's story ended well. Many others aren't so lucky. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. For another beautiful story, please subscribe.